Joyce, and welcome to Umatta Consulting Podcast. If today's your first time on our show, please make sure you subscribe to all of our social media channels, especially Spotify. Today, we have the special privilege of speaking with Dr. Bilikis. She is a physician informat. I'd love for her to introduce herself as she sees fit, and we'll dive right into the questions. Bilikis, the mic is yours, please.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to join you on this podcast today. Thank you so much for the invite. Really appreciate it. I'm Dr. Bilikis Oladimeji, like you rightly introduced. And I am a physician-informaticist. I love to begin from there because that's kind of the root of so many of the things that I am. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, trained as a physician in Nigeria, and then decided on the career of an informaticist, which has brought me to the US and has taken me across multiple organizations, including GSK, Duke Health, Optum, which was my most recent one, and a startup that was focused on genomics medicine. Prior to all of that, I derived a lot of joy practicing medicine in Nigeria before my immigration to the US. I'm also a speaker. I'm a poet. I did performance poetry for some time. Had a great network of poets in North Carolina, where I lived for some time as well before moving to Massachusetts, where I live today. I also just recently started a business, and I'm really excited just studying through the process and also trying to get on board with some of the work that I can do to support human-centered, technology-enabled healthcare. Working with different folks like founders and existing organizations to see how they can benefit their business, grow their business around that, get the right clinical outcomes, and also be within the regulatory limit as they make healthcare better for the people that they serve. And I think those are some of the areas. But one of the other things I don't want to forget to mention is that I am a women's health advocate. That is something that's also central to my portfolio of career, and as you can see, and I enjoy all of the different roles and that I have, including being a steering committee member for Women's Health Advocates, being one of the members of the WAM Research Collaborative, that's Women's Health Access Matters, and also being an advisor as well as a council member for Springboard Enterprises, supporting new founders and helping investors navigate the world of women's health startups and investments as well. So it's been really exciting to be able to support the women's health ecosystem through advocacy, advisory, as well as just volunteering.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bilikis, for your wonderful introduction. You're doing so much amazing work, and we are excited to learn more. First question for you. You've had an incredible, rich journey from practicing medicine in Nigeria, as you shared, into leading innovation in the United States health system. What inspired your transition from clinical setting into the world of informatics and innovation?
So I think a lot of who we are professionally is influenced by what our personal life looks like. And I know that in my intro, I did a lot more of the career part, but I'm also a daughter. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. There's just so many other pieces. But of all of those, I think growing up with my mother, who unfortunately I lost her last year. And that has set me on a different trajectory, but we'll save that conversation for another day. But I think my mom was a big influence on who I am. She cared deeply for the people in our community, and she was so loving and so caring. And I think I took on that care bug, if you will. And even though I'd said that, I wanted to be a physician for a very long time, just seeing how my mom lived her life. She traded, what the US would call mom and pop shop. Kind of have a stall or a store selling regular food and raw food and some other things. It was, she is from that very, we're from a low socioeconomic background, of course, but her mind does not get limited by where she is. She had a clear understanding on who she is, and she let her influence grow. So perhaps watching her live a life was one of the biggest inspiration for me of not limiting myself by my environment. And then when I don't call it chance because I think it's part of the journey. I met computers at some point in my secondary school, which is an equivalent of middle and high school here in the US. And I just love the idea of creating something out of almost nothing. So you write a group of codes and you can see a car appear. You write another code and you're solving this quadratic equation. Those things really got to me and got me really excited about computers. And so when I found out about the field of health informatics, which is like everything in between that has to do with data in healthcare. So whether it's health data storage, whether it's data processing, whether it's artificial intelligence, and all of the things that all of it is embedded within the field of informatics. So when I found out about informatics, I just felt naturally drawn to it because it combined my love for medicine as well as my
Mm,
love for computers and data. And that just set me on that path um, of doing both in a way that would transform lives. And there's the whole concept, the thing about curiosity. I was very curious about how this new area of medicine can help to improve the lives of people, make impact on a larger scale, and how we can rethink the status quo of different health systems by leveraging technology and data.
that's great. I'm so happy to hear that your mom had such a wonderful
Yeah. Thank you.
inspiration to your journey. And my condolences, by the
Thank
way.
you.
And
Thank you.
I'm glad you were able to pursue all these careers. Second question for you: what does beyond the white coat mean to you personally, and how has your identity evolved across your many professional roles?
I love that question in particular, and that also tells you that I love the title of your of your pod. So beyond the white coat, I think it speaks a lot to me, and it's about expanding one's horizon. As a physician, our training, and I think this is also comparable to even other parts of the world. Our training is usually very focused on the human, which it should rightly be. But the interesting thing about health is that it encompasses beyond what happens within the four walls of an hospital or within the four walls of a clinic. It is everything that has to do with who pays for the service, how does the evidence for that service, how is it generated, how do we measure the outcomes, um, who are the different players that are within the system in which that care is being given, who are the excuse me, who are the influences of the policies that shape how we practice, what is the socioeconomic aspect of the lives of the people that we serve. Where do they live? What do they eat? How do they, how do they go about their daily lives? What is the political and commercial determinants of health as well, in addition to social determinants of health that most people are very familiar with? So all of those things, I think, are what I would say beyond the white coat means to me. And within my own journey, I think I really deeply appreciated some of the aspect of my medical education still that talked about management, and I think that opened my eyes a little bit. But that, if you think about it as a curtain over a window, that curtain got shifted even more when I enrolled at Duke University, at the Fuqua School of Business, to study my master's in clinical informatics. Management in clinical informatics is the MMCI program. You can check it out. It's amazing, and it has this whole view of bringing business or management, and then it brings the medicine as well as the informatics, and kind of creates an intersection across it, which is really helpful for understanding the health system within the US, and understanding how the interplay of different stakeholders that shape it, as well as some of these other influences that we don't necessarily, again, a medical student wouldn't really think about as much. I think it brings all of that to bear, and seeing the patient holistically rather than just as a combination of diagnosis and treatment.
I think that is great that you had a chance to add that into your experience, your clinical experience. It
Of
definitely
course.
helps you stand out.
I am
Again,
so grateful for it.
it helps you stand out, and especially right now with the technology age that we're in, there's just so much shift of roles, responsibilities, and I think that's why I'm very interested in your background, and even going further, we'll love to learn more about how can we ensure that technology enhances rather than sort of replace human-centric care.
Again, another very thoughtful question, because there's just so much going on right now, and one can get lost in the noise of things. There are papers that are talking about, oh, some technology is doing better than
People.
doctors. Oh, maybe we can replace XYZ by ABC. There's just a whole lot of talks about this. The truth and the reality is that for certain types of jobs, though, it's just clear, especially if it's just rote work that doesn't really have so much to it. I think there is that possibility of uh, technology taking some of the mundane tasks, and anyone who is wrapped up in a job that is doing that should have what's it called, a real fear of losing their jobs. But when it comes to healthcare, if there is any job that has so much of a human touch that is very, very hard to recreate without the human component, it is healthcare. A lot of, we can take a good example from the growth, the rising momentum that telehealth had
Mm-hmm.
during COVID, for instance. And everyone thought, oh, our lives have been changed. This is how healthcare is going to be for life now.
Right.
Turns out, no, that's not the case. As soon as everyone is able to get back in person and all of that, people went back to, yes, I still need to see my provider in person. Even during that time, there's just a limit to how much of care can actually be provided through telehealth. So, um, and there's, again, not to say that there are no benefits to all of these technologies. I'm just saying that there is so much human element that goes into healthcare. The whole aspect of trust, the whole aspect of someone holding your hand and being compassionate with you in a particular moment, the whole aspect of, you know, figuring out, not just, it's not just about the diagnosis, it's much more than that. There is a whole thing with the doctor patient relationship that, again, so many other factors are impinging on that currently, but in the real sense of it, I think there's just so much that physicians and other healthcare workers do beyond what can be easily replaced by by computers, AI. I think you said technology as a whole. So I'm using AI for as another example. I've used telehealth. Telehealth can be very useful in so many situations, especially when there is a shortage of healthcare workers in a particular place. You would want to have, if possible, whatever level of care that is possible, regardless of not you don't want to have no care at all, so you will benefit from whatever care that can be done over telehealth. It can also help with, supervision in some ways, where a junior, especially in low and middle income countries, where, again, due to so many reasons, access can be really hard. But you have to think about all of the other components that comes with that, and what does technology look like? What stage is it in those environments that you're looking at? But coming back to, I wanted to mention something about, AI as well, because that's the that's the current one that everyone keeps talking about. I attended a conference recently at MIT around it's human plus AI, which I think is actually the right framing for a lot of technology. It has to be human plus technology. And I think one of the resounding thought piece that I took out of the workshop and the discussions that day was, if you think there's some jobs that if you actually think that AI can replace them, it's because you have not defined the job accurately.
Mm.
So if you do take your time to define that job, some people say, oh, teaching is no longer in existence. Oh, medicine is completely eradicated. Like, no, absolutely not. There's so much more to it. If you think of a teacher as just writing curriculum and telling students what to do, yeah, there's some parts of that AI could do. But teachers, for instance, they sit with the students. They talk with them. They know the student in their class that comes from a poor socioeconomic, a poor household. They figure out how, like, what is the food for them, what is, like, AI will not come down and come and do that, at least for now. So, and the same thing with healthcare as well. And I think, as much as there is a lot of benefits to technology, we have to make sure that we're centering the people and their needs in it. And one of the best ways to encourage compassion that is not rigid and that is not false is through human touch. And I think that's still going to be very relevant for many years to come. Again, we don't know, maybe robots and several other things can come in and do some parts, but I think for the longer period, we still have to make sure that there is the human touch in that.
Dr. Bilikis, it's inspiring that you mentioned that in your response, because when we think about our primary teachers, the
Mhm.
teachers who may have had a huge impact on our lives as students, you're not thinking about the curriculum, to be
Yeah,
honest with you. At least I don't. You're thinking about the human connection, how they made you feel as a student, the time they took to help and support you when you were, lagging behind on a subject, or they pushed you a little bit further. So I'm appreciative of how you responded, because it's not always about how, they created a curriculum, you passed an exam, and you just moved on to the next grade. That you appreciate the interaction with a technology or a human being, but it's about the extra effort, the empathy, their ability to see beyond what you are thinking about yourself as a
that is right.
student. And I
That
feel
is
like
right.
for me, the teachers I'm more connected to were the ones who saw me more than I actually identified myself as a student at the time.
Absolutely. And just that exchange of experience, that seeing hearing, like feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling supported.
Right.
Again, the whatever we have today is far away from being able to do so much of that. Some people would get elements of that. I know people who depend on some of the Gen AI chatbot, chats as like companions for psychology and so on and so forth. They might get elements of that, like, oh, I feel seen. But the again, if we look deeper, that exchange of culture, that exchange of compassion, that it just, the human touch is going to be essential. So many people talk about how a statement that their teacher made changed their lives. Like there's that impressionism that happens at different ages that either push us or even mar us in so many ways, that I think that component would always be needed. Um, Again, for the nearest future, at least for the technologies that we have today.
Very true. Very true. You often talk a lot about three things, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to say: health,
Yes.
equity, and education. How do these pillars sort of guide your work and advocacy today?
That's a great question. I want to take a step back and give kudos again to someone. His name is Mr. Michael Akinleye. I think it was in one of my discussions with him that I articulated my three things, because he shared his three things, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to actually think about things. And so I kind of went back, reflected on it, and I was like, some things are central to the way that I actually approach my work and approach my career and all of that. And those three things came to the surface. Health, again, with that's like it's almost everything. Like my whole entire career journey is health, and I don't see myself doing anything else, honestly, because that's what brings me joy. The whole depth of care that I was talking about earlier comes from that. And why not health too? Because and I'm going to forget this quote that puts it very nicely, that without health I wouldn't be here.
Right?
Without health, a physician would not be able to practice. An artist would not be able to do his art. Like it is just essential. In my native land, my native tongue, they would say that. How do I put it? I'm trying to see if I can, if I can translate. It's like Ilera Joro, which is like health is even greater than wealth. Ilera Loro is what they would say, which is health is wealth. But again, it's even greater than wealth, because when you have the wealth, if you don't have health to enjoy it, what's in it? Nothing. So I think it's just very, very important to center that. The other one is equity. I don't like I believe that quality health should not have a zip code. It should not be dependent on the color of your skin. It should not be dependent on where you live, what work you do. I think everyone should have access to the best care that is possible. Um, and I think that is one of the goals that a lot of places, even the US, to continues to struggle with. There's no joy in disparity. I think there is a lot that we all need to continue to do to ensure that every human is seen as whole, and we can continue to do that. So that lays a foundation for the way that I think, when I'm either designing a program, designing an initiative, helping with product development, that is very central to that. And then education. Um, Without education, I wouldn't be here as well. I'm so grateful, and I always come back to this a lot, that if if I happen to have been born in a different part of Nigeria, or if my parents weren't proponents for education, because my paternal grandfather, for instance, doesn't believe in educating girl children. at all, or even past a particular level. So if not for my mom standing her ground, if not for like all of those things, I won't have the education that I have. And education has the power. Again, it doesn't have to always be the formal education. It's you learning. It's you um, learning, whether it's schoolwork or learning a trade or just building something for yourself that's really helpful. I think without that, I wouldn't be here. And there is an importance around educating the next generation as well, so that some of the work in health, in even education, and all of that will continue to exist. There is also the layer of patient education on top of that as well. So again, it just cuts across a whole different part, especially if patients don't understand what you're telling them. It will be hard for them to take the plan to run with the plan that you've provided them, which health literacy is a big deal, and it's something that we need to think about. So whether I am designing a program, whether I'm designing an initiative, whether in strategic planning, or any of the work that I do, I think I try to layer all of those three things on top of them. And a lot of times, I think I'm able to pull different perspectives that may not have existed if I didn't, do that internal check on, okay, health, good, equity, great, education, gotcha.
All three things checked.
All three things checked.
Yes. And I think they're all connected to your core values too,
That
from
is
hearing
right.
you
That is
say
right.
what you said earlier.
That is
Now,
right.
let's connect all those three things to how do we create inclusive pipelines into health tech and informatics for underrepresented communities, especially young people in Nigeria, which you were speaking about with your experience in the US and the UK.
That is a great question again. And it is one that I continue to work towards and also think about and try to reshape and rethink as I progress. I'm a believer in pulling others as you're moving up, as you're moving forward as well. So we lift as we climb is
Right.
is one of the ways that people say that. And I think it's it comes from a place of, okay, wanting others to succeed and optimizing others and so on. But it also comes, sometimes I do the reality check that it also comes from a place of, who is going to take care of you when you are older? Who is going to take care of your parents? There's like real reasons for it, apart from just um the drive of kindness and wanting others to excel as well. So I think, however, whichever side you want to choose, whether it's from caring for others or thinking about yourself, I think there's an imperative for you to want to do this. And I think maybe I'll start from what individuals can do, because I think it's not a burden that, and it's not really a burden. It's not a weight. I should probably say that it's not a weight that only individuals should carry. And I think it's something that requires multiple stakeholders to understand what their role is as part of it. So there's the individuals that need to do certain things. There is the government that needs to do certain things. Organizations, associations, corporate bodies, and so on. They have a role to play in making sure that we build the right pipelines, and especially an inclusive one that looks like the communities that are going to be served by those individuals or those young people, and making sure that we are very intentional about how we plan what that looks like. For me, it looks like being the best or doing the best that I can in every role and opportunity that is being presented to me. Living, being visible, even though honestly that I struggle with a lot. Like almost every post, I still have to like think and be like, Jumoke, why are you posting? And I'm calling myself my native LinkedIn. Why are you doing this? I can't count the number of times where some people will be like, oh, I saw that post that you did about
Right.
XYZ. Can you tell me more about this? I never thought that that was possible, but I saw you do that. And I just felt like there is an opportunity there. So leaving, some level of visibility to the things that we do, to how our path, or our growth and even our challenges can be a good inspiration for others to know that they can actually
Mhm.
take those parts. The other thing I do is when I was in Nigeria, I would go to schools like high school, middle school, secondary school back in, in Nigeria, talk with the students about whether it's SDGs, whether it's technology, try to do that. When I was living in North Carolina as well, I had a whole system around that through Duke, through some of my network. So the Duke would have like I think it's called school days or something like that, where they encourage their employees to go out and give back to the local communities. There was Durham professional career thing that happens also within. I lived in the Triangle, so Durham was one of the places I lived, and they would invite speakers to come to the schools, and multiple times I've been in the Durham public schools talking about informatics, talking about healthcare, talking about different things, and showing them what is the art of what is possible. I've also there's a Women in STEM. It was another organization that I was part of, and we would go to schools again, run things with Girl Scouts sometimes, introducing people to STEM and all. Personally, I've also ran a book drive where I shared, and there's an overlap of the women or the girls part and that. Now we need more of the boys part too to encourage a lot of boys into several of all of this skills providing component, because I think when we lift everyone together regardless of gender, I think we do better. And so I've done a book drive that's about STEM, both in Nigeria and the US. It was a very small thing, but I just love. I wanted to wrap my intentions in an action. So I was able to do that through being able to do that, which was really exciting for me. And so that's on an individual level. I think there's multiple things that people can do to ensure that through being visible, through acts of even speaking at different schools and all of that, and showing up for people, I think we can encourage the younger folks. And seeing that, just seeing someone that looks like you can be a
Right.
very good thing to do that. And then when it comes, again, policies with policy, we would encourage and would advocate and all of that to say, hey, we have to have a strategy around making sure that this happens. I don't want to go too much into politics, but we all understand how some of the STEM, the funding, DEI issues, and all of that are starting to kind of roll back some of the progress that has been made. I think it's very important, both here and everywhere around the world, that we continue to advocate for the right things, which would be an inclusive pipeline into health, tech, informatics, STEM, however we want to define it.
Excellent. Excellent. It sounds like a setback, but at the same time, we have people like you who are doing the work in the individual level, who are
Yeah.
constantly giving back and offering presentations, and it's inspiring for a younger girl or someone who's in mid-career to see that this is something they can aspire to do. I want to connect what you're saying to our next question. You've held senior roles across pharma, academia, and healthcare systems. How did each environment sort of challenge or sharpen your leadership style?
Ooh, that again, great one. I think, all of I'm trying to see where to begin. I think I would say awareness, curiosity, and an attitude, or how do I call it, like a characteristics of lifelong learning are some
Hmm.
of the reasons why, or some of the ways that I've even been able to get into those areas. And when I was talking at the beginning around what my Duke education as well as my medical education, what they've done, I think those are some of the things. They broke some of the barriers to me thinking, oh, can I do that? That's one of the things. I think even getting into those roles were testament to sacrifice, to believe
Hmm.
in itself, and just daring and being courageous to um, go a different path, or like I always say, take the road less traveled, if you
Yes.
you will. So I would say that for each of them, they are very different, and I think beginning with an intent to understand. Um, so seeking understanding first has been one of the hallmarks of me being able to be there and make some changes, or impact the environments that I am in, regardless of what part of the ecosystem it is, whether it's pharma, whether it's academic medical center, and the rest of it. And then in terms of how that has shaped my leadership, I think it brings that it brings a sense of empathy. It brings a sense of um, focusing on people's strength and their superpowers, rather than digging really hard on the things that are their weaknesses. Because I think we, as leaders, sometimes we lose sight of that, where we're focusing so much on what this person is not doing
Right.
well. And as an HR person, you
Yes.
you also you also understand this deeply. It is at the time of, even before recruitment, what do we need for this role? It is what is on the team currently, and what are we trying to add to it. um I've taken so much assessments in this world that I'm like, because I always want to know about myself. Of course, I put the site, like, what's it called, discernment art on when I'm taking those assessments too, because sometimes they can get things wrong, or they can get things very, like, really right, but there's some of them that are really really good. And so if you get into the habit of doing those types of assessments too on the team, you can start to see, say, if you're taking Six Genius, I don't know if you're familiar with that, for example, that kind of, I'm forgetting, the Six Geniuses, I think that's what it's called. If you take that as an example, you already know who is the innovator on your team.
Right.
Who is
Diplomat.
powerful in discernment and things like that. And you can start to think about, how do I balance the superpowers that I have? Or even if you use strength finders, for instance, you can say, okay, I already have these types of folks on the team. Who else, or what else do I need? What is the thing that needs filling? And then being able to do that. I think that's very important. I also think it also enables me, because I am able to then see some other leaders and the way that they interact with me. Would I want to be led by me? Is a very good question that leaders should ask themselves as well. Like, I know the leaders that made me feel, woo, I can do anything. And I know leaders who made me feel like, wait, but
Yes.
I'm doing my work. Now what's going on here? There's multiple people that you can learn a lot from, and it's learning what how you want to be as a leader, and who you don't want to be as a leader, based on how those leaders approach you as well. But for me, again, in terms of how I lead, my leadership style is very adaptive. I pick from different methodologies. One of the ones that stand out to me was from Duke, where we actually took a training on situational leadership. I think that's very good, because it helps you. It begins from that place of understanding. Who is this employee or report, and then you can go from there to say, okay, here are their superpowers, these are the things that they are well aligned to, and then you can give them tasks and duties that are related to what they are very, very good at. Sometimes you might not have the luxury of bringing in someone to fill
Mhm.
that space, but you think about it as an improvement for them. So you let them know what they're doing that is amazing, and you play to their strengths. You help them build their weakness in some, if in some ways, and shape and form. And then you make it a growth phase. So you don't give the person who you know is already weak in something the things
Right.
that when they fail, you're going to be in, like
Right.
everything is going to be in trouble, and then you end up having to make decisions that are not necessary. Again, you can figure out as a leader, how do I play to the strengths of those that are on my team, and how do I help them start building up on their weaknesses if necessary, to ensure that they're already building that up before there is a need for it. I think that's sort of one of the ways that I think about it. And I the other part I don't want to forget to say is being able to set that clear vision, giving them the gift of clarity. I always say clear is kind. I've heard it multiple times. That's very, very true. A lot of times, because of the nature of my work, we work in environments that are very ambiguous, where it's not very clear. So if you can give them a line that they can tell to say,
Mhm.
okay, all of this is not very clear, but this is a line that we can, one, this metric is still very, very important to us. If we can focus on this particular path, and we can start to figure out everything else. And I think one of the best feedback that I've gotten from some of my reports is that clarity, that Bilikis gives us the opportunity to understand where the why behind what we're doing. She sets clear vision around what we are going to accomplish, and she centers the patient and in all of what we do, so that we know that as long as we're centering the patient, as long as we're bringing the voice of the patient into it, as long as we're bringing the voice of the provider into it, we won't be going astray. We will be going in the right direction. And whenever we need to change course, she knows to do that, and clears the road for us to be able to, clears out barriers from the way, for us to accomplish our goals. So those are, and I think that's one of the best feedback that I've gotten.
Exactly, exactly. And those are all great feedbacks for you as a leader. I want to ask, what advice would you give to young women, especially women of color, who want to lead in the future of medicine and technology, based on your experience?
Hmm. That one is really a loaded question. And I'm hoping that uh for people who want to lead in the future of medicine and technology, I think for you to lead anything at all, it begins with knowing yourself, awareness of who you are, awareness of what you bring. Um, I think those are very, very essential to being able to do that. Beyond that awareness is then the belief that you can actually do it. So that's the other thing. Um, be curious, be, like I said earlier, be a learner. Use I always tell people that events are either blessings or lessons. Sometimes blessings and lessons are even wrapped in one. If you don't learn anything from any event, you may, like, almost everything has some form of learning, whether it's a job type, whether it's a task or a stretch assignment. Take the opportunity to learn from them. The other part would be seeking mentors, either directly or indirectly. I have so many indirect indirect mentors that I just following them, and just, it's almost learning by diffusion. If you
Yes, yes, yes. You would need it. You would need them. You
you would
will.
hope that it would be osmosis, because then there's a layer, you interact with them, and then there's some, you just, by watching them, you
Yes.
some of, so have mentors, which I know can be challenging, because the truth of the truth of the fact of the matter is, especially for people like us, we sometimes either held back by what we believe or just the true nature of what's going on in different systems. It might be hard for you to find those who would fully invest in you and be on your side and be. Well, I want you to know, if you're listening, that young young person, young woman listening, women of color listening, it is possible. I've had mentors and I am grateful for them. It came later, a little bit later on. You have to be a little bit intentional and all of that. But and I don't, sometimes you don't even have to define the relationship as mentorship is another thing to note. Have advisors, have mentors, have champions, have sponsors, which is one that I'm forgetting that name, but there's is it Carol? I'm forgetting that the name of the person who talks about sponsors a lot. But it's very important to also have sponsors. These are people that would mention your name when you're not in the room. Yeah, that
Mhm.
would carry your paper forward. If you know what I
Very,
mean.
very much
I
needed.
think those are very important. But know that you are able and that you're enough. Like Lisa Nicole says in Abundance Now book, you are your rescue. You can do this. Like um don't let the nobody, people say this, that nobody owes you anything, and it's really true. If you own that, even if people feel like they owe you something and they give you something, you take it, that's fine. But when they don't offer it, when they don't give it, you know that you're your own rescue and you can plot a path for yourself. I would say that's very, very important. The other part is, don't make equity an afterthought. You have to keep it central, front and center in what you do. And I think that way, your perspective would shine through. And you would not only be occupying a seat at the table, but you will be bringing your voice to light, and you would change how things are being done, or how innovation is being done, how programs are being designed, because you bring your own um, lived experience, perspective, and all of that into the way that you contribute to the work that you do. I think there's so much to say about that. We can talk about that all day. But I think remembering ABCD. So A is awareness of yourself, your work, and your environment. B is believing in yourself and maximizing your superpowers towards a particular purpose. C is curiosity. Always, like, just leave that light on. Let that bulb, let that bulb on your head continue to continue
Got
to
an
spin.
epiphany.
And then the design, like D, is design your life to include work.
Yeah,
Don't work to, how do I say? Don't live to work, but work to live.
right.
So those are some of that's how I would summarize that.
Very nice. I think those are all awesome nuggets. I know, Billy Keys, you're also a founder. You've recently started your business. For
Yes.
founders and startups, what are some of the most common challenges you see when it comes to overcoming circusy mindset? And how do you guide them to build confident without compromising quality?
Again, that's a
Confident
loaded
challenge.
question. I feel like it speaks to me. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And you have to constantly remind yourself that you're bigger than whatever limiting belief might be coming up for you to say, oh, you can't do this. There's this challenge here that you cannot surmount. That's not true. Read more stories, read more books. you know. Um, go on LinkedIn sometimes, and just you'd see that, again, it can take time sometimes to be able to get things going. But there's an opportunity if you work hard at it and you strategize effectively and you learn from those um who have started this before you. I think there's opportunities to learn. No two people would have this exactly the same path. If that was the case, everybody would just copy and paste. But that doesn't work. You are a human being that has probably different experiences from what your mentor has. And I tell my mentees this as well. My job is not to create another Bilikis, is to make you the best version of yourself and maximize your potential. And I think that becomes very important too in founders' story. In this At this point, and so now I'm going to take it away from just founding a business into maybe creating a startup and creating something in health technology, for instance. Having worked with a few founders, and being on the other side too as an investor, reviewing decks and all, I think some of the the biggest challenges that I've heard founders talk about is funding, and that is a big
Hmm.
deal. Still till today, there's still a lot of disparity in how startups are being funded, especially when they are women led or black led or Hispanic led. Like there's just so many layers on top of that you can think about. And I think it's important to know that reality, but not to be held back by
Right.
that reality. So even though it is real, you don't want to own that limiting belief that you can't raise capital,
Right.
that you can't grow, that you can't succeed. You have to be the biggest believer in yourself,
Hmm.
to start with, and to understand that every relationship would always have it. When you ask for help, it's either a yes or a no. Just prepare your
Right.
mind for it. But there is, I think the abundance mindset is very important, where you know that what you're seeking is seeking you. It's out there,
Right.
and hopefully you will get it. But I like this whole idea of balancing reality with with the belief about what you're looking for.
Hmm.
I would also say that don't let those limiting beliefs then make you cut corners, because
Hmm.
especially in a space like health care, we're talking life or death.
Right.
And this is even very essential if you're someone who has not worked within the health system before. It's very important for you to be closer or get counsel from those who have worked within healthcare, because some of the things that you may see as someone who is outside healthcare that feels like, oh, this is a straight line.
Right.
Oh boy, you will like the things that are behind that, the incentives that are driving that, you know, what people are rewarding, how people are doing quality measurements and metrics, how people are defining outcomes can be really different than what you're thinking about. So it's very important for you to have counsel. You should um, also try to sort of sit with the people who have the needs. I know a lot of founders who create a solution based on their own experience. That is really great, because it kind of gives you a little bit more passion and more energy to do it. But don't be too caught up in your own story or in your single story. Try, like Chimamanda would call it.
Yes. That's the first time when I heard the single story.
Don't be caught up in your single story. Try to do your research. Try to get the experiences and the voices of others, so that you can start to map what the actual need looks like, not only from your own perspective, but from the perspective of more people. I think the more you get that data, the clearer it would be how to approach the problem. The other thing is falling in love with the problem so much that you can easily adapt your solution. If you're falling in love with the solution, it might be hard for you to do that. So falling in love with the
That
problem
is true.
is always very important, so that however you might need to navigate and move from one solution or update your solution based on the things you're finding on the research, it would be a lot easier, because you're not married to that solution, but you really want to see that problem being solved. I think clarity around that, persistence is always going to be very, very, very important. Building your resilience as you go, and taking care of yourself, because you can pour from an empty cup. I think those are some of the things that I will suggest. But again, it's difficult. You have to understand that, but it's possible. That's the flip side
Great
of it.
points. Great points. Great points. I'm inspired by your story, and anyone listening, if Dr. Bilikis is doing it with a husband, with kids, with a career, and also with the business, it's possible for you to also, start thinking in that direction. I want to ask you our final question, Dr. Bilikis. The healthcare ecosystem can be or can feel overwhelming, especially with rapid technological changes, as you know. How do you help establish organizational bridge the gap between clinical needs, regulatory requirements, and the business goals to create a clear and actionable roadmap for your business?
Again, thank you again for that question. And I think this comes into a lot of how I approach the work that my offerings. And it's also some of the ways that I approach work in full employment as well. I think, and a bit of it also can come from the response from the last question. In some ways, you have to be very clear on why are you doing this, why is it important. From a client perspective, is sitting with them, doing your best to begin with understanding. So tell me more. So my approach is, tell me about your organization. Tell me what your goals are. Tell me what some of your challenges are. Some of these things you'll be able to articulate. Some of them I will be able to surface intuitively, or from just listening to the backstory that you're providing, just because I have been in the system myself. As a physician, I've seen patient personally. I've seen patients, and I kind of know the way that the physician mind works when we're trying to unravel things. I've also been part of creating solutions for different ways, whether it's creating an analytical layer on top of creating like a data platform, analytics layer, figuring things out and knowing what to measure and when to measure it. I've also been part of the strategic, delivery rooms where we're taking all of that information and trying to see how to better shape our strategies around it. So I'm bringing all of that experience, either from working at Duke, working on quality improvement efforts, doing driving clinical research with informatics, or whether it's product development and bringing in that clinical, technical, business perspective in designing how to shape things, making sure that they are all of those areas are being tied together. And then I talked about regulatory as well. That's very essential, especially in a place like healthcare. I can help
Right.
you figure out who needs to be at the table, who are the necessary stakeholders that need to sit in that table when we are brainstorming what the solution should look like. I can help, pull from my network who we need to consult for different aspects of it, so that we're building a robust response to the roadmap, and then working with you to highlight what are the expectations that you have, and how does that align with what is needed to actually be successful in the areas. I'll help to figure out where some trips can be, what can trip you off, the difference. A lot of this come from experience of just working within the system, both on the front line as well as in the back end as well. And I would love to come visit, if it's say for instance, if it's a practice, I would love to come sit and see and observe how things are being done, and then be able to say, okay, here is what we can derive from this. If it's not possible to come visit, I will, of course, we'll take your story, and then we'll use that to map what needs to be done. We start from a divergent thinking aspect, and then we get into the convergent, where we start to develop what the solution would be. And we'll try to keep all of your goals in mind, make sure that we keep the realities on the ground, whether it's clinical workflow, whether it's the type of product that you're building, what is research saying, the primary research that you do or secondary research that is available. We're going to bring all of that together and synthesize that into a roadmap that can make sure that you are on the path to be successful at what we decide. Of course, layering all of the technologies that are available on top of that. So whether it's AI augmented clinical decision support, whether it's telehealth as part of a clinical program, whether, there's just so many things that we
Right.
can layer on top of it. But it begins first from asking the question, the questions around why this, why now, and why is this important? Like we just need to get to that understanding so that we can build from that foundation.
Well said. Well said. It sounds extremely comprehensive, and I'm sure with your background, you're able to navigate those conversations extremely
Right.
well, so you can sort of direct your clients or potential people you're working with in the right direction. Thank you so much, Dr. Bilikis, for speaking with us today, for speaking about the three things that you are so passionate about: healthcare, equity, and education. Do
Yeah.
you have
And
any
I want to
last
add,
minute
awesome.
words you would like to share? Or also, if you would like to tell us how anyone can reach out to you if they want to connect with you further about the work you're doing.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I think you should add mind reader to yourself. I think so. In terms of last words, I think we've been saying that we live in a VUCA world for some time now. Maybe about a decade. I know I've been hearing VUCA. Oh, things are volatile. Everything is
Hmm.
unpredictable. Things are complex and ambiguous. Oh my, where we are right now, it's like VUCA plus plus. But I wanted to share with the listeners something that I heard about an optimistic reframing of volatile, unpredictable, complex, and ambiguous. How you can attack that, or probably still maintain sanity in all of that, is through vision, through understanding, through clarity and agility or adaptation. If you think about it, the first one is VUCA. This next one is also VUCA. So it's how do you deal with that VUCA is through another VUCA, which starts with vision, being like
Yeah.
projecting, figuring out what you want to do, having a clear vision, um, making sure that you seek understanding. I think one of the things I said the most today is understanding. Like you have to begin from listening, humble, just be willing to understand, seek to understand first. And then clarity is a result of some of those things. And then agility and adaptability. Like if like people would say today, AI may not take your work, AI may not take your job, but a human that's using AI might take your job. It's you being adapting to where the world is today. And in addition to all of that is I would hope that, especially because of my work in health, I think we all should not lose our humanity. Our human touch is very, very important. So medicine and just the way I was raised helped me to know that we are all humans, and we all do well when we feel cared for.
Right.
And so we should not forget that aspect. There is an important underlining thing that makes us all human, and um we all need to be a lot more empathetic and compassionate with one another. And then the other thing is, I wanted to share some love with generalists and people with range. Like, yes, sometimes the world might look like, the people who are specialists are the ones that are doing the things, but I would say that you having that cross-functional experience can actually be a superpower for you. So it's just knowing when to bring the different. I always do this at my meetings sometimes, like, okay, I'm putting on the physician hat now, or I'm putting on the informatics hat now, or I'm doing the whole intertwining in my mind before I share whatever comes up. But I think people with range, you are needed now more than ever, because the world is a very complex place. We need a mix of both specialists and generalists to actually get things done. So don't feel like you're not necessary, or you're not relevant in today's world, is the other thing. And then I think the last part of your question was how people
Can
can
reach out.
reach me. I would say that you can reach me on my LinkedIn.
Yes.
That's one of the easiest and fastest place to find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. Um, I You can also find me via my I don't know if it's okay to share. So shareable.com is the website for my business, and depending on how things go, it's the place where I'm hoping that I can continue to grow and have my clients reach out through there. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not only a physician informaticist, I'm a speaker. So please reach out if you have speaking opportunities. I can, there's so many topics that I can talk about, including, healthcare, tech. I've talked about different women's health topics. I've talked about informatics. I've talked about application of technology and so much. And I've also talked about just human to human purpose driven life, if you will, and being able to overcome challenges. So whether it's a keynote, whether it's a scientific briefing or something, happy to be on a speaker or a panelist or for some of that. So I think those are some of the ways to reach out.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bilikis. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Right.